I was really keen to have you on because you're leading marketing at a global video technology firm. And you're
Yes.
someone I know that's proactively testing new AI tools to stay ahead. You told me that you felt late to the AI
Mm,
party, which was
yeah.
partially why you're testing so much. So tell us a little bit about that.
I think for me, the lostness or the lateness to the party kind of stems from being an innovator early on in my career. I feel like with AI, I missed the chance to, and I still even now feel like I've missed the chance to be at that bleeding edge to really be part of that early adoption side of things. If it niggles at me a little bit, but I will say that as a result of it niggling at me a little bit, I have then, taken the steps to then overcome it. And I'm very fortunate that I'm working somewhere like 90 Seconds where we are AI first. Our platform does have, AI features in it to, match creators with brands and so on. I've almost been blessed, I guess, in a way, Vinny, in that because we have this sort of, I guess, mantra as part of our values. I have the second chance at kind of really getting back up to speed on what AI can do and how it can support us as well. What I have found is that when I have been testing these tools, I have found things, that have really helped me along with my development with AI, but also just the outputs of what I'm able to achieve as well. I don't ever think I will be an AI expert, but certainly I think that you've just got to try and find things that work for you that are going to help you ultimately with your work outputs and ideally bringing some efficiencies to the whole process, because I think that that's where it really, for me, that's where I'm finding it to be the most useful at the moment.
Testing tools. Tell us a little bit more about how you go about doing that.
If we start with the why, you guys might actually do what I'm going to suggest. So let's start with the why. But ultimately, the reason why you should test is because you don't know what's out there. You don't know what the technology is capable of. You don't know the differences between some of the tools. Like, even if you're just solely focused on, let's say, content generation in your role, there are so many tools out there beyond GPT and beyond Claude to help you. There are others out there. If you're not kind of out there, kind of just testing different things, looking at different tools, looking at what's available, even within your current infrastructure, you might be a Canva user. Have you actually tested the Magic features? Have you actually tested some of their other AI sort of driven parts of the app? Even testing within your own infrastructure, I think, is really important because then you can better understand what actually is working and what still, you might need to come back to in a couple of weeks because there needs to be some more work done in the back end to make the AI more effective and useful to you. Earlier this year, I gave DALI, Midjourney, and I think it was FreePick. I gave them all the same prompt, and it was really interesting to see the results come out. DALI came out with the most literal infographic with the most terrible version of text, global with a double L or, a missing L or something like that, that kind of thing. Whereas, for Midjourney and for FreePick, they both very much looked at it more from a creative standpoint. They outputted imagery that was much more, I guess, kind of ethereal and less literal and more kind of a representation of what I was trying to get across. However, if I gave that prompt again now within GPT, I'm probably going to get something different again, and it won't give me that literal translation. It'll give me something else.
As per the previous point that we were making, the existing tools that we think that we know or that we are already using, they are getting better day by day. Even something as simple as, Canva Magic. I have seen these new features and I not scared, but almost like, oh, I just don't have the time. What are you saying there? Are you saying ultimately find the time, take the time? It's going to
Yes.
be easier to look at the tools that you're already using, but explore them as they evolve and
Mm.
carve out the time to do that.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, as a starting point, particularly for those of us who are like, I just don't have time. Because Vinny, it's not about fear; it's about priority, and it's about I'm just in my habits of this is what I need to do and this is what I need to get out. And it's really easy to fall into those day to days and just kind of roll like you've always rolled. It's about taking that time. I personally take out an hour a week. Like, it's not that much time when you look at the rest of the week and how much else you cram into a week. But, I spend in Friday afternoon, I find is usually a pretty good time. And just look at things that you're like, okay, well, I did this week. I wrote an email this week, let's say, and it was targeted at, it might have been targeted at marketing managers, and it's about video creation at scale and about being able to, shoot anywhere, for example. I've got a pretty solid way of doing it using our custom GPT that we've built. It's got our buyer personas in it, it's got our key messages, all that kind of thing in. But before then, you might have just gone, oh, I'll just write it myself and sort it out myself. But now that we have this custom GPT, it's all very quick and easy to write this email. But that does require that time that we spent up front to make sure that it's outputting the right things and making sure that we've given it enough information, like our tone of voice, our key messages, some of the language and vocabulary that we use, all that kind of thing, to make sure it then outputs something that's 80% the first time, as opposed to using just the generic GPT, which will probably get it about 60% the first round. It's not to say that you won't still go back and forth with the GPT when you build it, but it'll certainly be on a closer output. And the good thing about building those custom GPTs is that you then don't have to write a prompt as long as your arm to get it to do the right thing. So long as you've got those key bits, like this is the buyer persona, this is the purpose of the comms, this is the CTA, go write the thing. It's got the rest of the information already built in.
So practical piece here then. So if you're feeling late to the AI party, Rubina's advice is to find an hour a week and not just look at tools that you haven't used yet, but maybe explore the evolution of the tools that you're already using. The last question I'll ask you on this topic is, okay, so I've got an hour set aside every week. How do I make sure that that hour is the most productive? Do you leave it until that hour starts for you to start thinking about what you're going to do in that hour? Or do you think at the end of the previous hour session, what do I want to look at next week? Or do you go through the week and kind of make bullet points as you go?
I think for me, it's really about looking at something that was hard for me this week. That's an incentive to then actually go and find a solution. Because it may even be that you don't know how AI can help you with that particular task. So, yeah, I think for me, that's where I kind of start, is usually from a pain point. I had one the other day where the team were like, oh, this is a great custom story that we've done for a client and we'd like to share it, but we're going to share it on socials. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to share the whole 2 to 3 minute video because that video that belongs to the client. But what we do need is some social clips out of it. Actually, there's an AI tool that can help you with that. If you've come across Opus Clip in your time, that's something that you can basically throw in the whole video. It'll then find the hooks that it thinks is going to perform well on social, and then you can export it out and then do some tops and tails and watermarks. But there's all sorts of tools like that that are available on the market from a 90 seconds perspective. Like, we're fully, embracing that. And, I guess the thing for us is more about encouraging our creators to be transparent when they're using it. I think that's where it all kind of really sits, is that there's so many different tools out there. What I found to be the most useful is when it comes from something that I struggled with during the week or something that just took longer than it should have.
What advice would you have for marketers at organizations that don't necessarily support AI experimentation?
Now, this is where it gets trickier because you might actually have to put in some out of hours work on this one. But I think that, even a lot of the tools, so many of them all have like free plans to get started, you know, create a fun photo of a dog, that's running through the air and catching a frisbee and that kind of fun stuff. So I think that's kind of where those people can give that a shot, is just try sign up with your personal accounts and still spend that hour. I'm going to record myself talking for a minute and then see what Opus Clips is going to spit back out as content for TikTok, for example. In that case, it's probably less about the problems that you're facing and more about the things that you like, and you might, have a bit of fun with AI and sort of play with it in your spare time. But again, it is about that discipline, Vinny, about, saying, okay, well, I am going to spend this hour, and just making that time to kind of play. Because ultimately, I think that in this market, while I don't think marketers are going to be replaced by AI, I certainly do think that people who've got an understanding of AI and can use AI effectively are definitely going to be in higher demand, particularly as we move forward.
If you are in a position where you're not able to experiment with AI on company time, the advice is still take some of the challenges and pains that you have in your role outside of your working hours. Try and find tools that can actually help you overcome those, build up a use case, a business case,
Yeah.
and find an appropriate time and way to pitch it back into the business.
Interesting that you bring this one up. So I actually am going to give a shout out to my friend Rebecca Weber. She works for the Department of Education in South Australia. In the education sector in South Australia, there is a testing process for students who speak English as a second language. Normally, this assessment takes a teacher up to an hour to complete. So Rebecca, as one of the leaders in literacy at her school, at her high school, was, working with one of the other teachers to put together, to do the assessments. Now, what she found was, hang on, there's got to be a better way of doing this. There's got to be a more efficient way of doing this. But ultimately, she started kind of working within the confines of the AI that they have in the department. So they do have access to some tools. And she started using that to try to see if she could start building something. Ultimately, she got some traction, was then seconded into a role within the corporate department to then fully flesh out this app, this AI app. They've since won awards for it. She's traveling around the world talking about it. It's pretty incredible, but ultimately the result here is that by kind of doing this, out in her own time, she was able not only to bring up the business case for it to be completely supported and rolled out, but also it's now cut down the time for teachers. So instead of it taking an hour per student, it's now down to the AI that they've developed is going to take, I think it's about 30 seconds for each student to do the assessment. So the students submit, test scores get submitted, it then goes through hundreds of pages of code, criteria, etc., and then it spits out the level, the LEAP level. So, and depending on your level, there is associated funding. So it's really critical that it's right, so that the students who need more support get more funding, and those who don't need as much support, they get a commensurate amount of funding from the department. So it's been, I think, a huge game changer, and also a game changer for all those teachers, because ultimately what they're now able to do is just focus on the learning and the interventions they need to put in place to assist these students. So I think that, if you're in one of these industries where there are some restrictions, the other thing to do is to understand why those restrictions are in place. If you work in the finance sector, for example, or you work in professional services, there's probably going to be some restrictions. Get to know IT and understand why those restrictions are in place, so that when you then do develop your business case, you can hit those risks straight on the head straight away.
So, prompt engineering, right? Do you think prompt engineering is actually a job title? Do you think it's actually something that only a handful of people can actually do? Or do you think that prompt engineering is just being able to instruct with clarity of message a machine to provide a result?
I'm in the second camp. I'm in the latter. When the AI was not as well versed as it is now, and when we couldn't control the confines of the data, so like when you're not using custom GPTs, you have to give it all the context straight up, Benny. If it doesn't have a finite sort of pool of data to draw on, because you're saying, do not search the internet, only refer to these documents, and then give me the answer. So if you haven't got those kind of things in place, then you basically need to put all of that information into the prompt, which is where I think someone like a prompt engineer can come in to, do those kind of, really almost multi-page, kind of prompts. And don't get me wrong, there are going to be some areas, like you look at the Coca-Cola ad from last year that was entirely AI generated. That would have been a whole series of prompts and conversations, but the prompt would have been, at least a couple pages long to get the right output. So I think for me, it's probably less of a specialist role and more of just part of what everyone has to do as part of their role. And I think that that's the way that I personally, my take on AI is that it's not one person's job. It's not just marketing. It's not just sales. It's not just delivery. It's not just engineering's job. It's everybody's job, because AI is going to basically support So, kind of leaving, oh, well, I've got to wait for, the prompt engineer to write my prompts. Well, that kind of takes, I think a step back from where AI is empowering us to kind of do more, be more, create more. I think having someone who is the gatekeeper of prompts, particularly in an organization, yeah, that's not particularly helpful. That's not to say that you might not need one of these guys to come and consult when you're building something from scratch. And if you have never built a custom GPT before, for example, you might pay a specialist to help you to kind of set up these confines and to set up those barriers. And you might engage somebody to help you clean your data so that it's structured correctly and it's accurate. Because honestly, the AI outputs are only as good as what we give it. So, I think that there's certainly still room for consulting in those spaces. But for someone to be the prompt engineer who holds the keys to the castle, I'd say no.
But then also, if one of the things that's getting in your way is, yeah, but I don't know how to prompt engineer very well. I don't know how to communicate to these things. At the end of the day, it's not a job role for something working on it day to day. Play around with it. All you're doing is learning how to be clear and concise in your message. That's it. That's all you're trying to do. We haven't got long left, so I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions. You
All
good?
right, bring
All
it
right.
on. Let's go.
What's one resource, book, blog, podcast, talk, etc., that fundamentally changed the way you work or live?
In general, okay, I'm going to say why Simon Sinek because it came to mind first. I think that was a big one for me. I can say a group of people too. When I first started my career, there was a social media club in Adelaide full of all these other early adopters of socials. And I will say that, yeah, that definitely also impacted on my career hugely.
If you could only give one piece of advice to B2B marketers, what would it be?
I'd say play, test, test again. I think that, our sector doesn't have to be boring, doesn't have to be beta boring. I'm sure we've seen that so many times in so many prezos. But ultimately, get on the AI bandwagon. Don't be scared. And if you make a mistake, the worst thing that's going to happen is an image will come out with 6 fingers on it. It's really not the end of the world.
Who are the influencers that you follow in marketing today?
I do rate Stephen Mail. He's over at AirOps at the moment. So yeah, he does a lot of AI, agentic workflows and things like that. I have to shout out to Tim Lillyman at XPon. He inspires me fortnightly, Vinnie, as do you, particularly in this AI space. So yeah, also to Axel Sukianto as well. I don't know, I rate your feed so highly on LinkedIn, mate. It is always a good source of inspiration and also reminders of things that are basic but important. And also, final shout out to Christopher Chow over at Smokeball. I just love your videos, man. I think they're so fun. I love your takes, and they do always bring a smile when I see them in my feed.
I'm honored to make the list. Thank you, Rubina.
You're welcome.
What is something that excites you about B2B today?
I think it's more fun than B2C. As a marketer who spent a fair chunk of my career in the B2C market, I love the complexity of B2B.
Rubina, it's been fantastic talking with you. Thank you so much. I'm going to end us on a joke.
Okay, love it. Let's hear it.
So why did the B2B marketer cross the road?
Well, I don't think they were doing what the chicken was doing. So you tell me, Vinny.
For the funnel of it.
Oh, very good. Very good. That is a wonderful dad joke. I love that. Brilliant. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you, Rubina. Thank you for giving us your time. We'll see you on the next one. See you later. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.